Yo, welcome back everybody. Hope everyone's having an amazing day, and this is What If Deku had a Kagune. So this is going to be like around an hour long video, maybe 50 minutes, and I'm going to post part 2 maybe soon, and that's why I haven't posted in a while. And big shout out to Zether since we're almost at 1,000 subscribers, and he's the one who encouraged me to make this YouTube channel, and we've almost hit this milestone. Other than that, guys, let's get straight into the intro.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
Okay guys, let's not waste any more time and let's just jump straight into this what if. We start off with this what if with Izuku being born in the hospital. He's born with black hair and not much else is distinct about Izuku. And Inko and all the other doctors think that Izuku is a pretty healthy child. And Inko takes Izuku home. But when Inko takes Izuku home, Izuku keeps on crying and constantly needs help. As we skip to when Izuku's growing up, he's not much of a, how do I say this, an extrovert. He doesn't hang out with other kids and is extremely shy, but he still looks up to heroes. Basically, his personality is just like in canon, but even more shy and more of a crybaby, if you understand. And Izuku still wants to protect the people and wants to just be like All Might, as he looks at All Might's video almost every day. He admires All Might and all the other heroes, just like canon again. And when Izuku sees Kacchan bullying another kid, he immediately rushes in, putting his hands out, telling Kacchan to stop. Kacchan tells Izuku to move aside, telling him that he doesn't even have a quirk yet, and he won't be able to beat him. Izuku told Kacchan with all of his might, telling him that he'll beat him even without a quirk, and Izuku was even stunned by himself for saying this. When Kacchan hears this, he laughs, realizing that finally Izuku grew some balls. As he tells his goons, it seems like Izuku finally stood up for himself. As he looks back at Izuku, telling Izuku that it's probably the wrong time for him to do this. As he immediately rushes at Izuku, about to throw an explosion at Izuku's face. But before the explosion could hit Izuku, a huge Kagune appeared out of Izuku's back, protecting him from the explosion. As the Kagune went back into Izuku, everyone can see Izuku's hair turning white. Everyone is just wondering what's going on. As they look on, Izuku's personality completely changed, as he told everyone to get away or else he'll have to kill them, as all of them are just wondering what's going on. As Bakugo yelled at Izuku, telling him that that was his line, as he immediately started rushing at Izuku again, throwing explosions. But Izuku was unfazed as he just put his hands in his pockets, as the Kagune reappeared and started blocking all the explosions. With one swift movement, it hit Bakugo straight in the ribs, knocking him out. As Bakugo's goons see this, they're afraid of Izuku's power and immediately run away. When Bakugo wakes up, he sees Izuku standing over him with a cold face, as he just looks at Bakugo in disgust. As Bakugo gets up, snarls at Izuku, and walks away. Then, Izuku turned around to see the kid that he was protecting. As he turned around, he sees a girl with purple hair who was afraid of what was gonna happen to her. As Izuku told her that she doesn't have to be afraid, as he picks her up. As she tells Izuku that her name's Toka. As Izuku told Toka that it was nice to meet her, but he has to go now. As he told Toka that his name was called Izuku Midoriya. As Toka was blushing, Izuku went home that day. As he met his mom was just confused since Izuku has white hair now, and his personality is completely changed. As she asks Izuku what happened or what was wrong, Izuku responds by saying that he got his quirk. His mom was ecstatic as she immediately rushed at Izuku and hugged him, as she took Izuku to the quirk doctor. When both of them get to the quirk doctor examines Izuku and sees that he has another organ in his body which can manifest this liquefied muscle, and he can use it as a predatory weapon or defend himself. As the quirk doctor explains this to Inko and Izuku, he tells Izuku that he can call this quirk anything he wants since it's never been seen before. As Izuku thinks, he tells the doctor that he would like to call it a Kagune. After that, Izuku's quirk was classified as Kagune. As Izuku was leaving the quirk doctor that day, him and his mom get into the car and start driving home. As they were driving, her mom immediately pressed the brakes after a huge muscular figure jumped in front of the car. As Izuku's mom went out of the car to see who it was. But when Inko stepped outside, she saw a muscular man who was getting muscle fibers from his arms, as she was just confused what was going on. As she asked the man what he was doing, he immediately slapped Inko across the face as she landed to the side, as she fell unconscious. As Izuku saw this from the car window, he was just astonished that someone would do this, as he was overcome with rage, as he jumped out of the car with his Kagune manifesting from his back. As all of a sudden, Izuku's eyes completely turn black with red pupils, as he immediately starts rushing at Muscular, trying to attack him, as Muscular was easily dodging this and grabbed Izuku's Kagune and threw him to the side. As Muscular laughed at Izuku, telling him that he was too weak to fight him. A little kid like him couldn't even beat him in his dreams. As Izuku was seeing Muscular about to punch him straight in the face. But before that could happen, a burst of water hit Muscular as Muscular flew back. As Izuku turned to his side, he saw Koda's parents, or is known as the Water Heroes, attacking Muscular. As Izuku was confused what was going on, in the midst of the battle, the Water Heroes yell at Izuku, telling him to go grab his mom and to make sure that they get away as quick as possible. As Izuku, with no hesitation, ran as fast as he could to his mom in the midst of the battle. As he woke up his mom, as her mom noticed what was going on, she immediately rushed to the car telling Izuku to get in, as they immediately got home. As Izuku got home, he notices his mom bleeding from the head. As he asks his mom if she's okay, she says she'll be fine if she just puts on 2 bandages. As Izuku sighs and turns on the TV, as he finds out that the Water Heroes died protecting them. As Izuku slams on the ground as his eyes turn black with a red pupil. As Izuku thinks to himself that he's a complete weakling and he couldn't even protect his own mother, as he wonders if he can ever become a hero. From that day forward, Izuku started training his Kagune, making sure that he can get strong enough to defeat the villain that killed those 2 heroes, and making sure that he can protect the ones that he cares about and loves. As Izuku was training one day, the girl that he saved from Bakugo, Toka, walked up to Izuku and asked him if she can train with Izuku as well. As Izuku just looked at her and looked away without even responding. As Toka was confused, she just joined in the training, as Izuku had no objections. As both of them were training, Toka uses her quirk, as she manifests 1 very small wing and 1 very big wing, as her quirk is very similar to Hawk's, but it's more like her Kagune in Tokyo Ghoul. As we continue on with the story, both Izuku and Toka get very close, as Izuku feels like she's one of the most important people that he must save if she's ever in trouble. So Izuku started training intensely, making sure that he can get strong enough to protect the people that he cares about. While Izuku and Toka were training one day, Bakugo was actually in the distance spying on them, seeing how strong they were getting together, as Bakugo was also training from the day that Izuku beat him, as he was training and realized that he wasn't getting strong as Izuku or Toka. As he was getting frustrated, he immediately rushed at Toka while she was off guard and did an explosion straight in her face, making her fall back and being knocked out. As Izuku saw this, Izuku was come over with rage, the same rage that he felt all those years ago, the same rage when he felt Muscular slap his mom across the face. as Izuku couldn't bear it anymore, as he started screaming into the air, as his eyes immediately glowed black with a red pupil, as Izuku's Kagune started coming from his back, and a Kakuja mask formed on Izuku's face. As his Kagune, or should I say Kakuja, formed out of Izuku's back. As Bakugo was watching this, he was inundated with fear, not knowing what to do, as he wasn't even able to move because of Izuku's bloodlust. As Bakugo was just standing there, Izuku immediately blitzed, stabbing Bakugo through the stomach. But right then and there, Toka wakes up and sees Izuku doing this, as she looks at Izuku in horror. As Izuku turns around and sees Toka, he immediately passes out, falling to the ground next to Bakugo. Then Izuku wakes up in the hospital, not remembering a thing, as he immediately grabbed his head, feeling a huge headache. As Izuku walked outside his room, he sees his mom, as his mom immediately rushes in and hugs Izuku, as she asks Izuku if he's okay, as Izuku said that he was fine. As Inko told Izuku that he should go check on Bakugo, as he was just confused why Bakugo was here as well. As she pointed to the room where Bakugo was at, Izuku entered the room. But as soon as Izuku entered the room, Bakugo sees him and immediately starts yelling at Izuku, calling him a monster and telling him to get away, as he starts yelling at him. As Bakugo immediately rushed at Izuku, throwing an explosion straight at Izuku's face, as Izuku immediately dodges his attack and is about to throw a punch. But Izuku decides that it's better that he just leaves, as Izuku exits the room. As all the nurses hear the commotion, they immediately rush into Bakugo's room, as they see Bakugo in a cold sweat as he was grabbing the stitches on his stomach. As they ask Bakugo if he's alright, Bakugo just nods and enters his bed again, as he remembers the mask that was on Izuku's face. But also, Toka was watching this as well, as she was using her wings to peek in through the window to see what was gonna happen if Izuku entered the room and what Bakugo was gonna do, as she was watching both of them. And Izuku actually noticed Toka, as he immediately exited the room for that reason. As Izuku headed outside the hospital to meet up with Toka. As he meets up with Toka, Toka explains to Izuku, telling him what actually happened. As Izuku hears this, he falls to the ground, realizing that he wasn't even able to protect his best friend, and that he's not even strong enough to control his own power, as he wondered if he's still a weakling. As Toka tried to comfort Izuku, but Izuku just pushed away her hand, telling Toka that he needs to be alone for a while, as Izuku heads back to his room to think. When Izuku got back to his room, he went onto his hospital bed and just started thinking why he was so weak. Why couldn't he control his power? Why couldn't he be better? Why couldn't he save the people he loved? As Izuku thought to himself about these things, he decided that the only way he could probably get stronger is by distancing himself, making sure he can grow stronger without hurting anyone else. So Izuku decided that his only choice is to escape. As Izuku opened the window that leads outside, all of a sudden the door to his room opens, as Toka and Inko open the door, seeing Izuku about to jump out of the window. As both of them yelled at Izuku, telling him to stop, but nothing would stop Izuku, as Izuku immediately jumped out of the window, using his Kagune to, break his fall, as Izuku immediately started running into the woods. As Izuku just continued on running, as far as he could, as fast as he could. As Izuku finally lost breath, he realized that he got pretty far away as he took a quick break. As Izuku fell to the ground, panting, not realizing that he's completely out of breath. As Izuku got up, he notices a shadowy figure as he yells at the person to get out. As Ayato steps out of the shadows, Ayato tells Izuku that he's been watching him for a very long time. As Ayato continues telling Izuku that there's someone he wants him to meet. As Izuku's just confused, Izuku takes a step back and unleashes his Kagune, telling Ayato that he doesn't want to hurt him. As Ayato just laughs, telling Izuku that he needs to follow him right now. as Ayato immediately manifests two big wings, just like Toka, as Izuku realized who this person is. Then, Izuku asked Ayato if he was Toka's brother, as Ayato didn't answer this, but Izuku knew that there was a lot of similarities, and he knew that Ayato was Toka's brother. Then, Ayato just started walking away, telling Izuku if he wants power, just to follow him. Izuku was confused and hesitant, but followed Ayato, trusting him because he was Toka's brother. Then, Ayato took Izuku to a weird warehouse, and Izuku can notice that something's wrong with this place, as Ayato put his hands out, telling Izuku to enter. As Izuku entered the building, he sees a man with a mask on, but Izuku can notice that his face is completely disfigured, as Izuku wondered what happened to him. But we all know that this is All For One, and he got his face disfigured because of the fight with All Might. So we continue on with the story with All For One telling Izuku that he was expecting him, as Izuku felt an ominous presence coming from this person. But then All For One told Izuku to come closer. As Izuku came closer, All For One whispered into Izuku's ears, asking him if he wants power to protect his loved ones. As Izuku thought, he nodded his head immediately, as All For One told Izuku in exchange for this power, he's going to have to pledge full loyalty, as Izuku agrees to this option. But when Izuku immediately said that, All For One immediately grabbed Izuku's head and started transferring a quirk to Izuku, as all of a sudden, Izuku felt a huge sense of pain that he's never felt in his whole entire life, as Izuku started screaming into the air. When All For One took away his hand, he tells Izuku that it's done, as Izuku, right then and there, passed out. Then, Izuku wakes up, seeing himself in a cage, which a door was linked to. Then, all of a sudden, Izuku can hear a voice, and this was All For One's voice, as All For One's voice explained to Izuku, telling him that he gave him the ability to shapeshift his Kagune. And then he continues telling Izuku that his training starts now. All of a sudden, the doors open as a giant Nomu walks through it, as the Nomu immediately rushed at Izuku and punched him on the face. As Izuku fell to the side, Izuku got up as he manifested his Kagune. As he started attacking the Nomu didn't even have a scratch on it, as Izuku wasn't even able to pierce it. As Izuku was wondering what was going on, the Nomu pummeled Izuku to the ground. As Izuku evaded another attack that the Nomu was going to give him, Izuku got up and remembered what All For One told him. As he also remembers Toga's quirk, he manifests his two wings on his back, as he immediately started to shoot things at the Nomu. But the Nomu was unfazed, as the Nomu rushed at Izuku again and punched him across the face, as the Nomu grabbed Izuku's Kagune and broke it. That's right, I'm gonna give Izuku a weakness here. Since Izuku is not a complete ghoul and he can consume like human food, he doesn't have like a weakness technically. So my weakness is like, what's gonna happen here is Izuku can basically break his Kagune, but with a lot of force. It has to be with a lot of force to break it. And whenever he breaks it, it takes him a long time to regenerate it. But what happens here is when it regenerates, it grows back stronger. So we continue with the story as the Nomu's holding the husk of the Kagune. As it throws the husk of the Kagune to the side, it picks up Izuku by the collar, as it starts to yell in Izuku's face, as it throws Izuku to the side and starts to jump up into the air and is about to smash Izuku straight in the face. As Izuku dodged this and stood up steadily, confused in what was going on, as he couldn't manifest his Kagune. At that moment, Izuku was off guard, as the Nomu immediately rushed at him and started pummeling Izuku to the ground, as it kept on constantly punching Izuku in the face, as Izuku can feel the blood coming out of his mouth. As all of a sudden, a Kakucha mask started forming on Izuku's face, as his Kagune reformed and he was able to pierce the Nomu straight to the chest, as the Nomu fell to the ground. Then Izuku made sure to check if the Nomu is dead or alive. As Izuku checked, he saw that the Nomu isn't breathing anymore. But after he checked, Izuku felt lightheaded as he immediately fell to the ground. As Izuku woke up, he realized that he must have passed out of exhaustion as he sees the Nomu's body gone, as he's wondering what's going on. But then, all of a sudden, the doctor with the goggles walks up to Izuku and tells Izuku that he's gonna be here for a while. As Izuku's wondering what's going on, he asks the doctor for more information, as the doctor tells Izuku that they're gonna be training him with those creatures that he saw, that they call Nomu, and he's gonna be training for a while till they think that Izuku's ready. As Izuku's wondering what's going on, the doctor pressed a button as another Nomu walked in. As for the next few years, Izuku fought many different kinds of Nomu, and some Nomu were even specialized for Izuku. As you guys are probably wondering how old Izuku really is, Izuku is around the age of 12 when we went to All for One for help. And I would say that Izuku, for another 3 years, would start training against all these different kinds of Nomus and would get extremely strong. As the final day reaches by, the doctor lets Izuku out of the cage. As Izuku steps outside, Izuku's extremely powerful. The reason is because he's been fighting against different types of Nomus, and he's gained different abilities. As he's gained, like how to use his Kagune in different ways, and basically, in overall strength, he's probably equivalent to, All Might in present time. And his Kagune is probably equivalent to the strength of All Might when he is in prime. So that's how powerful Izuku really is, since he's been fighting all these different types of Nomu, and they've been getting stronger and stronger. So as Izuku steps out of the cage, the doctor greets Izuku, telling Izuku that he seems ready now, as he leads Izuku to a bar. Izuku's confused since he can see a person with hands on his face and a person who seems like he's completely mist, but the mist is black, as he also sees some person with a lot of piercings, as he's just wondering what's going on. As all of a sudden, everyone can hear All for One's voice, as All for One tells everyone that this is Izuku Midoriya and he's part of your team, as everyone is just wondering what's going on. As Shigaraki gets annoyed, asking One for All why Izuku's on her team, as All for One just tells Shigaraki that Izuku is a very powerful asset, as Shigaraki's just wondering what's going on. Then, all of a sudden, All for One tells everyone that Izuku will help them defeat all the heroes. As Izuku hears this, he's just confused what All for One means. Then, all of a sudden, Kirigiri opens a portal as Shigaraki grabs a cloak and throws it toward Izuku, as Izuku puts it on, still very confused. As Kirigiri opens the portal and takes Izuku and Shigaraki through it. As Izuku enters, all of a sudden Izuku can see all these different people getting ready for a battle, as he's just wondering what's going on. As he looks around, he recognizes some of these people as villains. As he's still very confused, Kirigiri opens another portal as a huge Nomu steps next to Izuku. As Izuku gets his Kagune ready, about to attack the Nomu. But Shigaraki tells Izuku to stop, telling Izuku that the Nomu is under his control. As Shigaraki's still wondering if Izuku is still a good asset. As All for One telepathically tells Shigaraki that Izuku will do a good job if we play our cards right. As Shigaraki's just confused what All for One's planning. Then, Kirigiri opens another portal as all the villains start bursting through. As we switch to Class 1A's perspective, including Toka, because Toka actually made it into Class 1A, as she was, did the entrance exam and actually passed and got into Class 1A. So as Toka and all of Class 1A are watching what's happening down there, they see this huge portal opening and a bunch of villains walking through, as all of them are just wondering what's going on. As Izuku entered the portal, he sees all the villains attacking one hero and also attacking some students, as the students are fighting them back. As Izuku's just wondering what's going on, he was gonna rush in to help Aizawa, but all of a sudden Izuku stopped in his place, as Shigaraki immediately put his palm on Izuku's neck, as he started to explain his quirk, telling Izuku if he put all 5 of his fingers on Izuku's neck, he would completely decay. As Izuku stopped in his place, as Shigaraki started to rant, telling himself that he all for one shouldn't have trusted Izuku and that he knew Izuku was a traitor. But when Shigaraki was ranting, Izuku immediately used his Kagune to slap Shigaraki straight in the stomach, knocking him back, as Izuku immediately ran into the crowd of villains as he started to defeat villains right next to Aizawa. As Aizawa noticed Izuku, he's just wondering what's going on, since he's never seen this kid in his whole entire life. So Aizawa decided that he'll check who Izuku is when he's done with the fight, as he immediately started going into the fight, and so did Izuku, as Izuku was beating a ton of villains, as everyone was just confused what was going on as they see Izuku. But Toko didn't notice Izuku as she was trying to defend off all the villains while she was on the shipwreck. As Izuku got to the shipwreck, he notices a bunch of villains surrounding the ship. As he looks up on the ship, he notices Toka and 2 other students, as he immediately uses his Kagune to hit the ground as hard as possible as he was leaping into the air, as he landed on the shipwreck with his cloak still intact. As Izuku took down the hoodie of the cloak, Toka sees Izuku and realized what was going on, as she immediately rushed at Izuku and hugged him. As Toka let go of Izuku and then immediately punched Izuku in the face, asking him why he left. As Izuku said that he deserved that, as he told Toka that he went away to get stronger, and he thinks her brother actually helped. As Toka hears this, she snarls, realizing that her brother must have done this, as she was actually trying to become a hero so she can capture her brother so he wouldn't go down a villainous path. But she sees that her brother couldn't be redeemed, so she decided to become a hero so she could take down her brother. As Izuku looked on, he asked Toka what she's been doing all this time, as Toka responded by saying that she's been training so she can become the best hero, and also tells Izuku that she also has a special power, but she'll tell him later, as Izuku is confused what was going on. As Toka explained to Izuku, telling him that the villains actually are raiding them right now, as Izuku realized that he was manipulated by All For One, as he destroyed the sword of loyalty that he gave to All For One. And Izuku was pissed, as he immediately jumped out of the boat, and everyone was just wondering what Izuku's gonna do. As all the villains started swarming Izuku, Izuku immediately used his Kagune to swipe everyone away, knocking them out. As Izuku climbed up on shore, he basically either knocked out or severely injured every villain that he saw as he was trying to get to the Nomu. But while Izuku was trying to get to the Nomu, Bakugo notices Izuku, realizing that was Izuku since he can never forget the white-haired boy who almost tried to kill him. As Bakugo was angered, as he immediately rushed at Izuku and was about to throw an explosion at Izuku's face, as Izuku immediately dodged the attack and is about to attack Bakugo, but realizes that that's Katsuki Bakugo, and he was about to do the same thing that he did a few years ago. As Izuku stopped himself, telling Bakugo that he's in his way, as Bakugo asked Izuku if he's a villain now, and if he is a villain, that he has a pretty good chance in dying today, as Bakugo started putting explosions on Izuku's Kagune, as he was trying to break the Kagune, but Izuku's Kagune is much more stronger, since all the Nomus that he fought basically improved his Kagune's durability by a lot, as Izuku with no other choice used his Kagune to slap Bakugo aside, as Bakugo fell to the ground, as Izuku immediately rushed to the Nomu. As Shigaraki noticed Izuku, Shigaraki immediately ordered the Nomu to kill Izuku, as the Nomu immediately rushed in even faster than Izuku could comprehend and grabbed Izuku's head and pummeled it to the ground, as everyone can feel the shockwave that came from that attack. But before anyone else could react to that attack, all of a sudden, the doors open to the USJ. As everyone looks up, they all see All Might, as All Might takes off the tie on his shirt, immediately rushed down, seeing Izuku being pummeled to the ground, as he punched the Nomu straight in the jaw, but the Nomu didn't even budge. But this wasn't enough of a distraction for Izuku to loosen his grip on the Nomu, as he could get away from the Nomu, as he immediately used his Kagune to slap the Nomu across the face, as the Nomu fell to the ground. as All Might is just astonished as he just wondered how Izuku was able to withstand the attack of the Nomu, since he can see the huge crater created by the attack. And he was also impressed that Izuku was able to, actually attack the Nomu as the Nomu fell back a bit. As All For One was watching the battle, he just laughs, realizing that the quirk that he gave the Nomu would allow him to withstand All Might's attacks and Izuku's. As he starts laughing, realizing that Izuku has no chance of surviving right now. But as we go back to the battle, we see All Might being off guard as the Nomu immediately punched All Might straight in the jaw as All Might fell back. As All Might started to punch back, and so did Izuku. As both All Might and Izuku, with perfect synergy, were attacking the Nomu as the Nomu was actually taking some damage. As Izuku was switching his Kagunes, making sure that he gives the Nomu a new attack every time. As both All Might and Izuku were actually damaging the Nomu as the Nomu was falling back. As Todoroki came in to help All Might, he froze the Nomu's legs but to no avail, as the Nomu easily broke out of them. As Izuku, with one swift move, tried to chop off the Nomu's head, but it didn't work. As All Might and Izuku tried at the same time as they hit the Nomu's head together, as the Nomu's head falls off. As the Nomu tries to regenerate, but both Izuku and All Might start punching the head of the Nomu and the body, making sure that the Nomu couldn't regenerate. But even if All Might was fighting for the short amount of time, All Might still took a lot of damage, since Izuku had to come in and help All Might defeat the Nomu, since this Nomu is extremely strong. So I'd say All Might is probably deflating right now since he took a lot of damage. And Izuku's just seeing this happening, as he sees All Might getting smaller and smaller, as Tementos comes in and makes a wall separating all the other students to Izuku and All Might. As Izuku sees All Might deflating, he's just wondering what's happening to All Might and wonders if this All Might's a fake All Might. As All Might completely, dissipates and he turns into his regular skinny form, All Might starts to explain to Izuku, telling him that he actually got into a severe fight with one of the villains and that he severely injured him, and now that he has a time limit for using his power. As Izuku's just wondering how this could have happened. As Izuku was curious and asked All Might if it was All For One. As All Might hears this, he asks Izuku how he knows this. As Izuku explains what happened to him, All Might tells Izuku that he has a chance here at UA, and that he'll pull some strings to get Izuku into UA. But then, all of a sudden, Principal Nezu walks in, telling All Might that there's no need, and that he overheard everything, and that he would actually like Izuku to come to UA. As he started talking, telling Izuku that he was actually planning on building dorms at UA so people could stay here so none of these villain attacks would happen again, and that they can keep the students safe. As Izuku decides that he's probably going to be going to UA, but then tells All Might that he would actually like to meet his mom first. As Izuku and All Might agree. But as we switch back to Shigaraki and Kurogiri in his lair, as they were asking All For One why Izuku betrayed them, as All For One started laughing, telling them that this was all part of his plan, and to let the plan play out, as all of them were just wondering what All For One was going to do. As we skip to Izuku going to his mom's house, as his mom sees Izuku, as she immediately starts crying, asking Izuku why he left. As Izuku answers it, Inko just starts crying again, as she just tells Izuku to never do it again. As Inko touches his head, telling Inko that he actually needs to go to UA. As Inko immediately starts crying as waterfalls start coming from her eyes. As Izuku just tells his mom to not cry and that he'll actually come to visit her every so often, and now that she knows where he is, she can also come visit him, as her mom agrees. So now, we skip to the first day for Izuku. As Izuku enters the UA high school building, he walks to the hallway as he finds a door that is pretty much huge and labeled 1A. As Izuku opens the door, still wondering why the door is so big. As he opens the door, he sees Ida yelling at Bakugo, telling him to put his foot down and telling him that he's disrespecting school property. And he also sees Uraraka as Uraraka notices Izuku and rushes up to him and asks him why he's here and asks him who he is. as Ida also walks up to Izuku and asks him the same thing. As Izuku just said that he's a new student. As he was about to take a seat, Bakugo notices Izuku and immediately rushes in and throws an explosion at Izuku. But Izuku immediately dodged, but Bakugo was about to throw another explosion at Izuku's back. But all of a sudden, Aizawa came in out of nowhere and used his quirk to stop Bakugo's attack. As Aizawa yells at everyone, telling everyone to sit down or he's gonna have to show them what he can do. As everyone sits down, afraid, Aizawa starts to explain the sports festival and tells everyone not to be worried, and tells everyone that there's not going to be any villain attack and they're taking extra precautions. As everyone gets ready, Aizawa tells everyone that they should probably train. But then Aizawa notices Izuku, and Aizawa asks Izuku to, introduce himself. As Izuku introduces himself and tells everyone what happened to him. As everyone hears this, Bakugo's the one who is most enraged, as he tells Izuku that he's a villain and that he's worthless, and that he should probably leave this school right now. As Aizawa looked at Bakugo using his quirk, telling Bakugo to sit down or he's gonna be the one to leave the school. As Bakugo sit down, snarling at Izuku. As lunch came by, Izuku sat in the cafeteria as everyone else sat next to him, bombarding him with questions as Izuku was overwhelmed and didn't know how to answer them. But then, out of nowhere, Toka grabbed Izuku and dragged him into All Might's office. As All Might then asked Izuku, straight to the point, asking Izuku what quirk All For One gave him. As Izuku just said that All For One gave him the ability to shapeshift his Kagune to his will. As All Might started laughing, realizing that All For One created another person that disobeyed him and is now against him, as All Might started to continue laughing. As Izuku was just confused why All Might was laughing. As All Might stopped and told Izuku that he needs to explain something to him. As Izuku started listening, as All Might started to explain what One For All is, as Izuku was just astonished. As Izuku asked All Might why he's telling him this. As All Might told Izuku that Toka is actually the successor to One For All. As Izuku just wondered how powerful Toka really is. As Toka entered the room, seeing All Might and Izuku. As she walks into the room and asks All Might if he's explained everything to Izuku yet, as All Might nodded. As Toka then crossed her arms, telling Izuku that if he's explained everything yet, he should have also explained the sports festival, and told him about how important it is, and told him that this is where he gets his internships and where he's able to become a true hero. As Izuku hears this, he sees that he's taken the wrong path, but now he's taken the right path. So now we skip to where Izuku and Toka are training for the sports festival. As they're training, Toka is usually using One For All to attack Izuku, as Izuku's easily dodging them, as Toka's impressed with Izuku's strength, as she asks Izuku what he did to train. As Izuku explained what he did, Toka is just astonished, realizing that Izuku actually beat those Nomu things 100 times, as she's just wondering how powerful Izuku really is. As Toka uses around 30% of One For All in her fist and rushes at Izuku, as Izuku is just astonished with Toka's strength as her fist lands in the ground when he dodges it. As Izuku also told Toka that it seems like she also got stronger, as Toka just smirks. But then Izuku grins, telling Toka that this isn't his true power, as she's just wondering what Izuku means. As Izuku then stops himself and tells Toka that he'll show her in the sports festival. So we skip to the beginning of the sports festival, as everything goes pretty much just like in canon, as Bakugo gives his trashy speech and the obstacle race is chosen first. As everyone gets ready in the starting line, everyone is anticipating Izuku's quirk, as they want to see Izuku's quirk in action again. But they weren't expecting what Izuku was going to do, as Izuku sprouts 2 wings that looks very similar to Toka's brother's wings. As Toka sees this, she's just astonished as she sees that it's very similar to her brother's. As the obstacle race starts, Izuku immediately blits up into the air and starts flying over all the obstacles. As Bakugo sees this, he does the same thing as he flies right up to Izuku and is trying to catch up to him. But this is to no avail, as Izuku immediately flies through the gate, getting first place. As Bakugo gets second and Todoroki gets third, as most of the other things go pretty much the same. As we get to the cavalry battle, Izuku knew that Todoroki and Bakugo were going to be rushing at him, and he knew that he had to defend the team that he was going to get. As he got Uraraka, Ida, and Toka on his team. As he asked his team if he trusted them. As they all nodded, the cavalry battle start, as Izuku used a defense Kagune, as he surrounded his whole team in a defense ball. As all the other teams tried to break open the ball, nothing would work. As Todoroki used some of his ice, but still nothing. As Bakugo tried to use his explosions, still nothing. As all of them are just wondering why this Kagune wouldn't open. As everyone was throwing the ball around like it was a toy or something, as all of them were just trying to break it open, as Uraraka and Ida just wondering how they were still alive. But Izuku assured them, telling them that they will be fine. As all of a sudden, a huge explosion happened, but still the Kagune didn't open, and this explosion was caused by Bakugo, if you were wondering. As the bell rang, saying that the cavalry battle has ended. And Izuku still, has his band, so he has, won the cavalry battle since he still has his, 1 million points. So now we go on to the one-on-one fights, as we go against Izuku against Shinso. As we start off our battle, as Izuku is not much of a talker, so I don't think Izuku is gonna talk in the midst of a battle, as he immediately rushes in, using his Kagune to kick, Shinso out of the ring. So I'd say Izuku would win this battle pretty easily. So now we go against Todoroki versus Izuku. As Izuku knows that Todoroki is only using one side of his power, and knows that Endeavor wants him to use the other. But Izuku knows that something's wrong with Todoroki, as he makes sure to know that Todoroki's quirk is his own. As he immediately rushes into Todoroki's face, as Todoroki stumbles back, feeling the bloodlust coming off of Izuku. As Izuku immediately uses his Kagune and slaps Todoroki in the face, as Todoroki's just confused what's going on, as that slap didn't hurt at all. But then Todoroki feels another Kagune slap coming in and expects it to be soft, as all of a sudden the slap made Todoroki fall out of the ring. As Izuku started to talk to Todoroki, telling him that there was no way that he was gonna beat him, and that he was much superior to him, and he didn't even use his other half of power, and how does he expect him to beat him? As Todoroki listens to this, he immediately engulfs his other side with fire, as he immediately starts attacking Izuku, as everyone else is just wondering what Todoroki's doing, since the battle already ended. As Todoroki calms down, realizing that the battle ended, and that there's no need to fight Izuku again, as he walks away stubbornly. As the final battle comes in, Izuku easily beats Bakugo, since there's no way that Bakugo is gonna beat Izuku. Izuku immediately uses his Kagune as he manifests it, and just slaps Bakugo as Bakugo was rushing at Izuku. As Bakugo fell to the other side of the ring, and Izuku just comes over and kicks him off, as Bakugo falls outside the ring, losing the match. As Izuku is crowned first place, as All For One was watching this from the background, as he was just astonished in how powerful Izuku really got, and thought to himself that Izuku will become a powerful asset. Okay, I know that I rushed through the sports festival arc really quickly. The reason is I just don't think that it's very important right now in this story, and I think that the other parts of the story are pretty important. So I'm just gonna continue on with the story right here. So as Izuku is in class one day, Aizawa starts to explain the letters and tells them that the internships that they get is determined on how they did on the sports festival. As Aizawa brings a whole bucket and pours it on Izuku's desk, telling him that he's gotten this many internship letters, as Izuku's just wondering what he should pick. As Izuku went to lunch that day, Izuku went in and sees All Might, as All Might called over Izuku and Toka. As Toka and Izuku sat down, All Might was very nervous explaining this to him, as he told Toka that he would like her to go to Gran Torino since he was one of her students, as he said this extremely nervously. As he stopped his jitters and looked at Izuku, telling him that he wants him to go to Yoshimura's internship since he was also a villain but turned good realizing what he was doing, and he actually became one of the best heroes. As Izuku hears this, he remembers hearing about Yoshimura, as he actually redeemed himself and becoming a hero. As All Might continues telling Izuku that he was actually one of his teachers at UA. After hearing this, Izuku thought to himself, realizing that All Might actually thought this person was a good teacher, so he decides that he might as well take Yoshimura's offer. As Izuku goes to the train station so he can get to Yoshimura's house. When he gets there, he notices that he sees Ida walking off stubbornly toward the train. As Izuku thinks nothing of it and enters the train, thinking to himself in what kind of training that he's probably going to be doing at Yoshimura's. As he gets to Yoshimura's house, he enters the door as he sees someone just standing there in a butler outfit, as Izuku asks what he's doing. As Yoshimura tells Izuku to change right now and that they need to go to a coffee shop, as Izuku was just wondering what he was talking about. As Yoshimura throws the same outfit that he was wearing toward Izuku, as both of them start walking down to a coffee shop. After a long day, Izuku was working at a coffee shop that was very popular and wonders what Yoshimura is doing there. As they get home, Yoshimura explains to Izuku, telling him that that was his coffee shop, as he asks Izuku what he's doing here. As Izuku's just stunned, realizing that Yoshimura didn't even know why Izuku was there. As Izuku explained, telling him that he was here from All Might, as Yoshimura asked him, is there any other reason? As Izuku thought to himself, telling him that he's here because he heard that he was also a villain, but also changed, and that he also was a villain and would like to change to become a hero. As Yoshimura heard this, he smiled and told Izuku that he would like to train him now. As Yoshimura takes Izuku outside, telling him that he better get ready for a very harsh training. As Yoshimura, with no heads up, immediately rushed at Izuku with the intent to kill, as Izuku can feel the bloodlust coming from him, and Izuku couldn't comprehend it, as Yoshimura's speed was too much for him, as Yoshimura immediately punched Izuku, and Izuku actually felt the punch, and he knew that was hard, as Izuku fell onto the ground, as Yoshimura started pummeling Izuku. As this was happening, with no other choice, Izuku had to unleash his Kakuji mask, as the Kakuji mask started forming on Izuku's face, as Yoshimura could feel the power coming from it. As Izuku unleashed his new Kakuji, as he immediately started rushing at Yoshimura, trying to kill him, as Izuku couldn't control it anymore, as he was going insane. And Yoshimura knew what he had to train Izuku in, as he immediately dashed behind Izuku and neck chopped him right in the neck, knocking him out, as Izuku fell to the ground. As Izuku woke up, he remembered what happened as Yoshimura gave him some coffee. As Izuku drank it, realizing that this was very good coffee. As Yoshimura told Izuku to get up and that their training is gonna start now. As for the next few weeks, Izuku started training his Kakuji mask, making sure he can control it without going insane. And Yoshimura is right there, so he can make sure that Izuku doesn't destroy anything. And not only was Izuku getting stronger with his Kakuji, he was also getting stronger with his Kagune. And not only was Izuku training, he was also working in the coffee shop that was nearby, as Yoshishima made Izuku work there. As Yoshimura was impressed with Izuku's progress, he told Izuku that he would like to take Izuku on patrol tonight, to see and stop if any villains attack. As Izuku decides that he wants to go on patrol today. As Izuku enters the train, he also sees Toka with Gran Torino, as Toka and Gran Torino are talking, and as he walks up to them, Toka introduces Gran Torino to Izuku. But all of a sudden, a huge Nomu flies through the window of the subway as it starts to enter and starts to attack Izuku, as Izuku dodges the attack. As Izuku exits the plane, Toka and Izuku are attacking the Nomu, but Gran Torino and Yashimori tell Toka and Izuku to go away and telling them that they'll take care of the Nomu. As all of them were rushing away, Toka and Izuku were just wondering as they saw Ida running in a different direction than everyone else, as they all wondered what was going on. As they followed Ida They find Ida lying on the ground as they see Stain, this hero killer, standing over him, about to stab him through the chest. As Ida yells at them, telling them to run away as he sees them. As Izuku, knowing what he has to do, turns on his Kakuji mask as he immediately rushes Stain, as Stain cuts Izuku's Kagune and licks the blood. But nothing happens, since this is a ghoul's blood, and Izuku can only be affected, and since he can heal and regenerate and basically has all the other abilities of a ghoul, he's not affected that much as he's only slightly paralyzed. But when he uses his Kakuji mask, he's not affected at all, as he immediately rushes Stain and whacks away the sword. As Stain wonders what he has to do, he tries to use hand-to-hand combat, but nothing works. As Stain is still thinking, Izuku hits him to the wall, slamming him, knocking him out. As Toko was impressed with Izuku's strength, as she starts to tell Izuku that she was gonna use her new ability that she learned, but it seems like she doesn't have to do anything right now. As Izuku says that he also got a new ability and I hope that she likes it. As Toka says that she likes it very much, as both of them get close. As Ida yells at both of them, telling them to stop, and that he's right here. As both of them stop and go away. But then, out of nowhere, Endeavor comes in, hearing all the loud noise coming from this direction, as he finds Izuku standing over this hero killer, as he realized what happened, as Todoroki is with Endeavor. As Izuku's wondering what's going on, he sees Endeavor, and Endeavor asks Izuku if he took down the hero killer, as Izuku nods, as Endeavor just snarls. Okay guys, this is probably where I'm going to be ending off the video. If you guys liked my channel, and if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because it would really help me out. And if we hit 1,000 subscribers, don't forget that we're going to be doing that live stream, and I'm probably going to be doing Among Us with you. We're playing Among Us and with some other what if YouTubers. So if you guys want to do that, don't forget to hit like that subscribe button. And other than that guys, I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys later.